I have a specific series in mind for this just because I think the series as a whole is fantastic, and that is the Wayward Guide. See, there's a fly. I'm gonna kill it. Arr! Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with a book tag. So today we are going to be doing the School Days book tag, which is one that I saw months ago on Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophes channel, and it looked like a lot of fun, but I put it off until about this time, somewhere in August, where it is back to school season, so it felt like the appropriate time to do this. Now, this was originally created by What Victoria Read, so I will leave both the original creator's video as well as Olivia's video down below if you would like to check those out. Basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a tag that's kind of split into two different parts, so you can do one, both, pick and choose, whatever you want to do. I'll be doing both because I'm extra. But basically there's questions based on the time of day as well as subjects for school. And it looked like fun, so we're going to do that today. I will leave all of the questions down below. If you would like to do this tag yourself, by all means, please do. Or just play along in the comments if you would like to do that as well. But I will leave all of this down below. But let's just get right into it. So the first portion of this tag is going to be based on times of the day for school. So the first question is First Bell, and that is tell us about the book that first got you into reading. This is a tough, tricky question for me personally, just because I don't know what that is. I don't know what the first book I ever read was, because books have been a part of my life since before I was born, really. Both my parents love reading, but my dad is a huge book collector like myself, and so books have just always been around. Reading has always been a thing. A fun story that I always end up telling on this channel when it comes to this type of video is there was this book called Where's My Teddy, which is my favorite book from when I was a kid, and I was able to read that before I could read, meaning I had memorized it and knew when to turn the page, so it looked like I was reading even though I technically hadn't learned how to read yet. So there isn't really one that kind of like sticks out for me. There used to be, but the more I think about it, the more I was like, actually, I've just always had books and reading around. There's never been like a one that like pulled out, one that was the one that kind of started everything. It's just always been a thing. The second question is break time, and that is what book have you most recently had to put like on pause or taken a break from or DNF'd. I'm going to go with my most recent DNF because that's the one that I can remember. I think is the most recent book that I put on pause anyway, and that is The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. I do have this book still, it's downstairs, but I'm too lazy to go get it. But this is I loved the idea of this. It basically follows Mozart and his sister, and it is like their story of how their father kind of pushed them into music and being kind of like, not, I guess performers, not necessarily composers, but just like being a part of music and performing music. There's also like this other kind of layer of like a magical world that only the sister can see, and so it mainly follows the sister of Mozart. But I read it because I thought that this was going to be great. The book was stunning, and it sounded like it was going to be right up my alley. But the writing was interesting for me because the actual writing was very lyrical, very beautiful. I loved the way it was written, but the plot was really boring and nothing was happening, and so I kind of gave up 50-ish, 75-ish pages into the book because I was just trudging through. I was forcing myself to read, and it was going to put me in a slump, so I decided to just, put it on pause. I think I officially DNF'd it. I'm not sure I'm going to pick that one up again, especially not anytime soon, but that's the one that I can remember most recently being the one that I kind of like started and then just kind of gave up on. The third question is lunchtime, and that is tell us about your favorite book that features food. So I actually don't read that many books that feature food, weirdly enough, because I think it's awesome and I would love to read more, so if you've got some recommendations, let me know. But the one that I have like vivid memories of the food is
Sorry, there was a problem with the app.
I didn't try to wake you up. Okay. Go to sleep. The one that I remember the most, like most recently, is actually The Dating Plan by Sarah Desai, which I ended up reading earlier this year. I got the arc off NetGalley, and this is a rom-com about fake dating, basically, or fake engagement, where both our female lead wants to like get her very traditional Indian family off her back, and the main male lead needs to be engaged or at least married for a year, I think it is, to get this distillery that his grandfather has left him. So they both are in this kind of engagement to marriage for a little bit, and then they're going to part ways and it'll be fine. And so because she comes from such a large family, whenever they get together, it's always food related, and there's always these beautiful descriptions of all of this incredible food that they're having. And I just, every time I read those moments, I got hungry. I wanted the food that they talked about, and it was so good. So like that's one that like really sticks out in my head as far as like food goes. The fourth question is Final Bell, and that is, which book have you most recently finished reading? And as of like 2 days ago, I finished The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This was on my August TBR. I've talked about this in a ton of different videos. Many humans have told me to read this because they think that I will enjoy it, or because of X, Y, Z reason. And all of you are right, it was incredible. I ended up giving it 5 stars. Spoiler for my wrap up in like 2 weeks. But I loved it. And this was, I'm filming this relatively early in the month, so this was a relatively early read for August, but it's great. So the fifth question is homework, and that is, what was the last nonfiction book that you read and enjoyed? So the most recent nonfiction book that I read was actually last month when I picked up Bygone Badass Broads by Mackenzie Lee. This ended up getting, I think, 4 to 4.5 stars. I'll leave my wrap up above so you can check that out if you want to. But this is basically a nonfiction collection of 52 women that changed the world, but they've been forgotten and people don't know a lot about them. And it's just written very well, in my opinion. It's really funny. It's very, very feminist. So if that's not your thing, as far as like very feminist writing, you probably will get annoyed by this, but I thought it was fantastic. And I loved it because I didn't know very many of the people in this book, but the ones that I did know, I didn't know that that was the person who did that thing. I just knew that that thing happened, if that makes any sense. But it was really fun. It's a good kind of coffee table book, or a book that you can like kind of pick up and read a few here and there, whatever you want to do. And my last kind of like question for the first part of this, of the times of day section, is staff room, and that is, tell us about a book that you go to when you just need a breath. And for me, it's not like a specific book that I go to, it's a specific type of book. So if ever I want a break, or just want something fluffy, or just kind of want fun, I go for a romance. It doesn't have to be contemporary, it doesn't have to be historical. Honestly, as long as it's a romance, and like that is the main point of the story, I'm a happy human. Because 9 times out of 10, you kind of know what you're getting into with a romance. There's kind of a very strict plot line, if you will, of like the couple. Now there are definitely romances out there that are very different, and those are not the fluffy romances, those are the very hard-hitting romances, and that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the fun, fluffy, mostly contemporary but also historical fiction romances that just, like, you know what the outcome is going to be when you get into the book, and it's just a fun ride to get there. So now we're going to start the kind of second half of the questions, which are all based on subjects that are taught in school. And the first one is English, which is, tell us about one book that you studied in school, and recommend one book that you think should be kind of on the curriculum, required reading, that kind of thing. So for me, as far as like studied in school, I actually still have a lot of the books that I studied. But I'm trying to think of the one that pops out on my head the most, as far as like the first one that I remember, and that for me was in 8th grade, which was Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I devoured this book in like no time at all. And it's not very long, but it was the first kind of like classic that I've read that wasn't like a Roald Dahl book or Lewis Carroll or something like that I would have been picking up anyway, because they were for younger readers. But we studied this one in 8th grade, and I've studied books before then, but this was the first one that like stuck out in my memory, and I just remember loving it. I don't know, I really loved it. I don't know if it was because It was about books. Now, primarily, this is a book about book burning, and our main character is kind of like against that, and so he kind of hides books. And I don't know if I found that part cool, but I just remember really enjoying this. So yeah, that's definitely one that I studied in school that like is the oldest one that I can remember. And then as far as one that I think should be taught in school, I actually have two, but they go together, so that's why I'm kind of lumping them as one. And that is George and Rick by Alex Gino. I've talked about these many times before on how they should be required reading. But George is a good book for elementary school. Our main character, George, is in 4th grade in this book, and then Rick follows a kid named Rick when he starts middle school, so when he starts 6th grade. So these are good for elementary and middle school, but these are both books that talk about kind of discovering your sexuality, kind of discovering who you are. So George is about a kid named George who knows that she is a girl, but everyone sees a boy, and so it's her kind of coming to terms with that, kind of telling her truth to her family and her friends, all surrounding this school play about Charlotte's Web that they're doing. And she really, really wants to be Charlotte, but because everyone sees her as a boy, they don't let her. So it's that story. And then one of the characters from that book is Rick, and so this is his story as he's kind of figuring out who he is and what he wants in life. And I think these are both really important and really good in their own respective ways. They show kids kind of a different take on things. Maybe they wouldn't have seen as many books about the LGBTQ plus community, or primarily figuring out who you are. Especially in Rick, you see moments of where the teachers are also learning, so it's kind of this continual learning pattern. And I just think that these are really important and would help kids who are questioning themselves. So that is my answer for required reading. But I feel like we all should have known that, because every time those books come up, I say they should be required. The next subject is math, and that is how do you rate your books. So I use a system that was created by G at Book Roast. I'll leave a video. If I can leave her video above, I will, but if not, it will be down in the description. And she does it through the Copile method, which is an entire spreadsheet that she does. And so this system is kind of an acronym that she has created herself on what's important to her and her reading. So it doesn't work for everybody. My husband tried using this at one point and it didn't really work for him because there was just some things that like he didn't care about that are in this system. But I use it because it's really helpful, especially I put enjoyment as a huge portion of what I rate it. So I'll tweak some of the, numbers in this system if I think that it should get a specific rating. But if I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know if this should be a 3 or a 4, that's when this comes really in handy. But it rates things on characters, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic, and enjoyment. And it's on a system of like 1 to 10, and then based on your kind of average score, it'll give you a star rating. So like I said, I will leave her video if you're curious where you can get this form yourself, as well as kind of see her describe it. But that's what I use. And I've been using it for 3 years now, and it's fantastic. The next subject is science, and that is which book couple do you think has the best chemistry? So this was tough, I'm not gonna lie, and I have a tie. But they're by the same author and they're in the same series, so like they could be lumped together. But that is Chloe and Red from Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and then Dan and Zaf from Take a Hint, Danny Brown. These are both written by Talia Hibbert. This is 1 and 2 in her Brown Sisters series. They just feel very realistic. It feels like they're perfect for each other. Their chemistry is fantastic as far as the banter goes. And it's just great, I love Talia Hibbert's writing. I've raved about her so much on this channel. But, like, these are so perfect because they are exactly what the other person needs. And they're just great, Like, I don't know how to explain it. They're fantastic. So these are my tied for best chemistry. Next subject is geography, and that is describe a book that has a good sense of place, great world building, kind of something along those lines. And I'm going to go with an entire series because I think this series really encompasses all of that, and that is the Wayward Guide series by Sean Mcguire. This one is the first one, Every Heart a Doorway. There are currently 6 out. I've read them all, and this is a world of worlds, basically, where it follows all of these different characters. And it's kind of set in this world where kids go through doors, kind of like Alice in Wonderland, the kids from Narnia, things like that, where they go through doors into these other worlds, and these other worlds are perfect for them. They're exactly what they want in life, even if they're not sure what that is. Then sometimes they get kicked out of the world back into our world, and they go to this home for wayward children, which is made up of all these kids who have gone through doors. It's run by someone who has gone through a door when she was younger, and it's just kind of like this middle ground station for people who A, don't think they're going to go back to the world, so it's kind of a good place to be around people like them, or B, they're just waiting for their door to reopen. And so some of the stories take place in this world where it's at the home, some of them take place in the individual worlds, but the fact that she has created this system where the worlds are kind of on this spectrum from reality to craziness, that's not what it's called, but that's what my brain is calling it. And it's just fantastic. And then to be able to create all of these individual worlds while all making it feel real, like it's all part of the same overall world, is fantastic. So I love her writing of these stories. I think her world building is incredible because they're all so believable. So the next subject is history, and that is, which 3 historical fiction novels have you enjoyed? And if you don't read historical fiction, what areas of history would you like to learn more about? Well, y'all know I love me some historical fiction, so narrowing it down to 3 was very tough, but I think I did it. And the first one is very obvious, I feel like, and that is Lovely War by Julie Berry. I read this a few months ago, loved it, have not stopped raving about it. It's incredible. But this takes place primarily in World War I, but over World War I and World War II. And it tells the story of 2 couples during the war, but it's from the perspective of Greek gods. It's just a very well done way of talking about it. I'll leave a link because I'm pretty sure I read this for a vlog, so I'll leave that linked above. But I think it's fantastic. You don't have to know about the Greek gods to really read this book. It's not super focused on that portion of it. That's just the way this author has chosen to tell this story, and I think it's incredible. So yes, definitely one of my faves. Another one is one that I read a couple of years ago, and that is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Schaefer and Annie Barrows. This is a novel told in letters, and it follows our main character Juliet, who gets this letter from a man because he lives on this little island of Guernsey, and somehow he got a book with her name in it. It must have been something that she had sold. So he reaches out to her because her name and address are in this book and says, "Hey, I really enjoy this author. I saw that your name was in it. Sorry if I'm reaching out really randomly, but do you have any other suggestions?" So that just kind of opens up this correspondence between her and him, and then a bunch of other people on this little island of Guernsey, because during their conversation, she learns that they've created this little book club of sorts called the, very long title here, and it was during the time of Nazi occupation. And so it's so well done. So I personally really enjoyed this. Obviously, this takes place in 1946 is when it starts. And it's just, it's so good. It's so good. And the last kind of historical fiction that I would consider one of my favorites is more fantasy than historical fiction, but it is set during the 20s, so that's why I'm going to count it as like a historical fiction, and that is Roaring by Lindsay Duga. We've seen this many, many times on this channel, but for those who don't know, this is set in the Roaring 20s, and it's set in a world where there are mythical creatures. And so it follows our 2 main characters. One of them is a siren, though she doesn't realize that she's a siren, but she does realize that she has this ability, so she refuses to speak. And then this man who is kind of like an FBI agent, but for magical creatures, and so he hunts her down because sirens are supposed to be super dangerous because they can make you do whatever without even thinking twice about it. And it's their story as they're being attacked by many things. In this book, they're being hunted down by like 3 different agencies. It's ridiculous. It's just pure fun. But it's set in the Roaring 20s, and it definitely has that kind of speakeasy feel to it. So that's why I think it's a very good historical fiction book, because while it does have fantastical elements of it, it's very much set in the 20s, which I love so much. The next one is religious studies, and that is, what book is one that you always come back to? Which is tough for me because I don't reread a whole lot, so it felt like only appropriate for me to say Harry Potter for this one, just because this is a world that I love the characters of, and so I always tend to come back to them. I've read this multiple times. It's probably the only book, minus some of my Jane Austen books, that I've read multiple times, and it's just very comforting every time you come back to these characters. The next one is PE, and that is to show the biggest book on your TBR, and without fail, that has to be A Court of Silver Flames. I mean, do you see how chunky this thing is? It's almost 800 pages, and yeah, I mean, even if it was in like paperback format, it's still quite large, so this is for sure the biggest book of my TBR, but I cannot wait to get to it. But yeah, look at this chunk. Alrighty, the next class is music, and that is which reading format do you think has the best rhythm for reading? And mine is a mix. I like listening to audiobooks while I physically read. That's just my favorite thing to do, especially if it's something like told in text messages, emails. The Illuminate files is perfect for this because the audiobooks are full cast and incredible, but also it's told in mixed media formats. So there's all these different files, and it's just kind of a very immersive experience. So I always find it, for me, the best way to read is audibly and physically at the same time. I think that's the question she's asking, but that's the answer I'm giving. The next class is drama, and that is what book do you think has the best ending? Now this is tough, because there's definitely been many a good ending in my reading career so far. But this one I just finished recently, and it stuck with me, and maybe because I've read it so recently, but like I had to pick it, and that is the ending of The Invisible Life by Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Now I think it sticks with me because in the last 50 pages, I was reading this while I was listening and reading. While I was at work, I had the audiobook of this. And in the last 50 pages, things happened and I wanted to cry so hard, but I was in the middle of my office. Like, it would just look weird if you walked by someone's desk and they're doing, like, work and sobbing. Like, that looks a little weird. So it took so much effort for me not to do that. But, like, the whole, like, last 50 pages was so, like, heart-wrenching, but also it's left off in a way that is very, I don't know what the right word is, but like there's an ending, but then there's also this little bit of like, but this could also happen in the future. I'm just gonna leave this here for you, the reader, to decide what happens. And that's what I really liked about it, is because there's an ending. You get answers to all the questions that you need, but it's also a standalone, so like we know we're not gonna get a second one most likely. And I feel like there doesn't need to be one, but there's this thing that's left for you to decide. This air of like, there's still more to the story, and I love that. The next one is art, and that is to show us 3 books that you think have the best covers. I've done many a video on this. I did one a few months ago on like beautiful books and book covers that I have and adore, so I'll leave that linked above if you want to see it. But ones that are sticking out in my head right now are these 3 that I'm going to show you. And it's not just because the covers are stunning, because they are, but like the whole book as a whole is very, very pretty. So the first one I'm going to show you is Alazzo by Darcy Little Badger. Now this cover, first off, I think the wolves are very, very pretty. We have this fun, what is it, like blue embossed title. But if you also take the cover off, the front of the book has these wolves on it, just like the dust jacket does, and I think it's fantastic. And also, like the book itself, I don't think it's going to come across well, but it's this speckled gray almost, but it's so pretty. This cover is stunning, but under the dust jacket is stunning as well. So that's definitely one of my answers. The next one is one that unfortunately I didn't really love the book itself. Like, the story was just kind of okay. I think it was written very weird, but the book is so pretty. And that is Mermaid Moon by Suzanne Kokol. This cover, first off, let's just talk about this. We've got floral things. It's obviously a book about mermaids because we've got a mermaid on here. It's very fantastical. The back is also really pretty. It's got these very pretty sprayed edges. But if you take the dust jacket off, look at the flowers that match the cover, and they're on both sides. And it's again this kind of painted, speckled almost cover as well. And then like the inside also makes it look Like, I don't know. It's a very pretty book. And the last one, I actually have a tie, but this one is smaller, so we're showing you this one. And that is Curse of the Wolf King by Sonia Odette. I hauled this one and then the trilogy this author has, which is the Fair Isle trilogy. This last haul that I did, so you would have seen it. But the other one is very similar to this, but this one's smaller, so we're showing you this one. But it's this very pretty illustrated cover. It also comes around to the back as well. That's got these roses. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I like floral things, so that's also probably something. But underneath the Just jacket is this stunning art that goes all the way around. This one that I'm holding primarily is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so the flower rose on the back and the roses on the front make a lot of sense. But I don't know, I like these illustrated covers. I think they're stunning. So the very last question subject that we have today is modern foreign language, and that is to recommend a translated book that you enjoyed. So I have a manga, because of course I do, and it should be absolutely no surprise because it is Dreaming Sun. I have raved about this for the past 2 months, and I will continue to do so. This one that I'm holding here is volume 1. There are 10 in this series. As of filming this, I've read 3, but I don't have all of them, so I need to continue to collect them because I loved them so much. But this follows our main character Shirahama, who I've kind of given this spiel a lot, so like, pardon me if you've been here for a little bit. But Shirahama is living at home with her father, her stepdad, and her new step sibling, and she kind of feels left out. She feels like her stepdad doesn't really care about her anymore. Her stepmom and him are only obsessed with this new kid, so she decides to run away. She meets a man in the park who says, "Oh, I've got a room that you can have for super cheap, but I need you to do a few things for me. First one being, tell me why you ran away. Second one being, helping me find a key to said house. And the third one being, have a dream and fall in love." And so she does all the things and moves into this house with a couple of guys that she actually goes to school with. So she does know of them. And it's just a very nurturing environment for her. And there's just, I don't know, it's been so much fun. And it's a lot about following your dreams and kind of when you're a kid versus when you're an adult, how that kind of plays out. And I've loved it. It's just some ridiculous fun. And I love it. And I highly recommend. That is the School Times book tag. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know down below if you've played along. Let me know some of your answers, or just give me a book that is translated. Give me a translated book that you would recommend, because I do not have very many of those, and I would love to, expand my very English horizon. But if you like this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media as well as other fun bookish links down there, so don't forget to check all of those out. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!